issues on the table for President Trump's July meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. But one big topic he could put on the table is Iran's current role in Syria and how Russia could help keep them at bay. Joining me now to weigh in, Nile Gardiner with the Heritage Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Elizabeth.
All right, I'm going to start with that we brought up in the intro because there's a lot that I want to get to. Is it plausible to think that Russia could somehow entice Iran to stop putting assets in any way, shape, or form into Syria, or is that just a pipe dream?
I think that's highly unlikely, actually, and certainly the Russians are working very closely with the Syrian regime, but also with Tehran as well. And so both Syria and Iran are, in effect, close allies of the Russians. I don't think that Vladimir Putin has any intention, actually, of forcing the Iranians to pull back or indeed to put any pressure on the Assad regime itself. And
so what are his intentions and what are his goals? We talk about election interference being brought up. We talk about arms control. We talk about Ukraine. We talk about national security. What does he want out of this meeting?
Well, I think certainly for Vladimir Putin, he wants to be seen as the equal to the United States president. So Putin wants to be seen as the leader of a superpower. In effect, of course, Russia has been in decline for many decades. It still has nuclear weapons, of course, but it's not a superpower on par with the United States. I think it's all about prestige for Vladimir Putin. He also wants to see, of course, concessions on the U.S. side with regard to sanctions, with regard to Ukraine. And of course, there are many risks involved with this summit. It's very important, I think, that President Trump projects strength and resolve in the face of his Russian counterpart. And so far, the Trump administration has been extremely tough in the face of Russian aggression. And so it's important that the president pushes forward positions that reflect already the very robust positions of his own administration.
We've been tough in the sense that we've seen a lot of these sanctions take place. Is that what you're mentioning on Russia?
Yes.
And then the rhetoric we're also hearing from now Secretary of State John Bolton, which is, he hasn't been shy at all. And he's actually come out aggressively and said, for those who are saying that there's like a nexus between those two, that's far from it. So he's sort of already putting himself out there saying that we're not entering this in a friendly manner. But at the same time, we saw the president tweet on Thursday and he said, with election interference, he sort of brushed it off. But Bolton is dead on that there was election interference. So how exactly are they going into this meeting?
Yes, well, John Bolton, of course, has been extremely tough on Moscow, and rightly so, and he's a terrific national security advisor. So far, the United States has confronted Russia on several fronts. So you've seen a whole wave of sanctions against over 200 Russian entities, for example. You've seen the strengthening of the U.S. military presence in Eastern Europe. You've seen the United States pledging to supply defensive weapons to Ukraine to combat, of course, the Russian invasion. So on many fronts, actually, the U.S. has been very, very strong, also confronting, of course, the Russians in Syria. For example, U.S. commandos fought a pitched battle against Russian mercenaries in Syria back in February, killing potentially 200 to 300 Russian mercenaries, actually. And so the U.S. position has been very robust. And this is an opportunity, I think, for President Trump to stand up to Vladimir Putin. The Russians are not our friends, they're not our partners, they're our adversaries. And President Trump must project real strength and determination in the face of what is America's biggest adversary right now on the world stage.
Right, and also correcting the title for John Bolton. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Niall. Thank you so much. Leland?
Welcome back to Traverse City.